Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is One of One, but you can call me Seven. Last episode was a bit of a, I don't want to call it a recap episode, but we were licking our wounds. Aoko and Shizuki got to have a very enlightening conversation about who the werewolf actually is and where Toko's base of operations is located, because Shizuki knew the whole time. Our man didn't think it was that important, and the girls probably would have lambasted him if he told them in the normal course of events anyway. So there's that. But also there was an even much more enlightening conversation that Father Airi and Shizuki had, and that was incredibly fascinating. Big insight into who or what Sojiro is, his character, who Father Airi is to Aoko, and how he knows so much about her. Just some speculation on my part, nothing that we really discussed. And how Shizuki feels about Aoko. I think the idea now is that he is in love with her. I mean, we had that whole thing at the park, or at the end of the whole park arc. But now it's just, it's not just her looks that captured his heart. It's her indomitable spirit. It's her will. It's all those things, so... Anyway, we have to see what's going to happen, because now night has fallen, and time is really running out for our three heroes, so let's see what's up. Right, so all Sojiro wanted to do was to see her face. He didn't care about anything else. He doesn't even know, really, or understand anything else that anybody else is saying at any given moment now that he's involved, as it were. But Yuika is saying that the recovery room is off limits. The sightless sister must have been waiting by the altar. She moved quickly to block his path. Miss Yuika, I'm not allowed in? Correct. Miss Konji told me to make sure nobody enters. Alice said that. Sojiro was suspicious of why Alice would have said that. He could understand being kept out if Aoko was being treated or her condition had worsened, but this seemed different. Besides, Aoko herself has said her treatment had finished. Now, Sister Yuika. There's no need to be so curt. Why not just tell him the truth, that the room is actually empty? Aoko left some time ago. But Father Airi... Uh-oh. The priest began to explain everything from the pew he still sat in, about the things he and Sojiro had spoken about, and why he, a stranger, would be so concerned about a person he knew nothing about. Well, I mean, he was talking about Aoko like a parent, like a proud parent, and to be completely honest with you, he has the same hair, the way that I don't know if this is anime's version of a widow's peak, and I don't actually think that I've seen this pointy of a widow's peak in real life, so I'm not even sure if that's what you call it, but... Father Airi, more like Mr. Aozaki? Not sure. Maybe I'm being silly. It all became clear to Sojiro. This was your plan all along. Sojiro's voice was full of anger, but Father Airi did not flinch. My apologies. Aoko requested I look after you. While I did need to buy her time to prepare, I honestly did want to talk to you. The priest's attempt to smooth things over was far from sincere. I mean, look at that face. Sojiro grit his teeth to control his rage. His rage? That's not an emotion that we've encountered with him before. Why had they not stopped Aoko and Alice from heading towards certain death? Because both the nun and priest were of the same ilk as the mages. As such, they understood Aoko's decision, and the priest understood Aoko too. Even if he did have the power to stop her, he would not have. The Aoko Aozaki he knew was not about to hide away in a church and lick her wounds. Where's Alice? With Aoko. They left about 30 minutes ago. Father Airi even went so far as to divulge the time. 30 minutes ago, the same time the priest reared his head. It would not take even half that long to get to the school from here. And then another 10 minutes or less to get to Misaki High School's old school building from there. Sojiro turned to the entrance of the chapel. However, where do you think you're going? The sound of her voice stopped him in his tracks. Oh! An unseen pressure had locked him. Oh, you can control it too? Her admonition seemed to carry a spellbinding power, stopping the foolhardy boy where he stood. You know nothing of mage battles. You're too weak to help. You'd be a liability. If they fall, that's their prerogative. Let them tear each other apart as they wish. A young, innocent bystander like you has no business taking part in such a calamity. She spoke with quiet anger. Her contempt was not directed at Aoko or Alice, though, but Sojiro for being so eager to waste his life. If there was a shred of hope, I wouldn't stop you, but there isn't. There's nothing you can do for them either. She was right. It would be pointless of him to go. At the amusement park, he had been useless in the end. Now they face something even worse. He couldn't even imagine how he might contribute this time.
言っておきますが
Listen carefully.
青崎青子
Akko
は
Azaki's
母に
grandfather trained her to
ご真
protect
実を
herself.
教え込まれ
Magecraft aside, she's still tougher than
そ
you.
の彼女も
Even so, she still doesn't stand a chance against that beast of a familiar. Sojiro's physical strength, his only edge, meant nothing. If he went now, he would only get in their way. Yuiko was correct. And yet,
行かないと
I have to
青
go.
子には返さなくちゃいけない借りがあり
I owe Aoko a debt I must repay. He spoke calmly, but firmly. Though almost moved, the sister frowned slightly. She felt bad for him, but her warning was for his own good. If he would not listen to reason, then she would have to make him sleep. She raised a finger of binding at
それを
Sojiro.
言うなら
You mean you
返したい借りがある
want to repay your debt, Sojiro?
それとシスターユイカ
Incidentally,
教会内での
Sister
魔術
Yuika,
は控えて
please refrain from using magecraft within the
使う
church.
のなら
At least save it for religious ceremonies, or it'll affect my investigation.
全くおとな
Dear
しそう
Lord,
に見えて
Give me
リツカ
strength.
君より短気なんですが
You seem so quiet,
あなたは
Sojiro, but you're more short-tempered than Ritsuka.
エイリ神父
If I may, Father
行かせ
Ivy,
てあげれば
I
いい
see
じゃ
no
ない
harm
で
in
すか
letting him go. Or would you rather see Toko destroy Aoko and Alice?
その問題と
That issue is
彼の
separate from the
献身は別の
suicidal devotion.
改めなさいしずきさん
Reconsider, Mr. Shizuki. Even if you go, there's nothing you can do for them. The truth of the statement cut Sojiro deep. But despite everything that was being said, his mind was made up. It always had been, even if he was not certain. He at least would not hesitate. He had always followed his instincts to the end, no matter where they took him.
分かっているでも
I know,
行かないと
but I'm still
こ
going.
こにいたら
If I stay here, I
本当に何
really
もできない
am powerless. His heart burned in his chest. While he listened to the priest talk, he could only think of seeing Aoko. He was not worried. He did not want to help. He just wanted to see her. He would figure out what came next once he got there.
ほら
See?
献身なんて関
He
係
isn't
足を
suicidal.
引っ張ると
You
言い
say
ま
he'll
す
get in the
が
way, but Aoko and Alice stand no chance of winning anyway,
な
correct?
ら彼がマイ
So
ナ
what's
ス
the
になっても
problem?
いいじゃ
Better
ない
to burn out in a blaze of glory.
神父
Father,
ほら宗十郎君
what are you waiting for,
言って
Sojiro?
言って
Get going.
シスター
Your response has moved, Sister Yuika, and now you can move your legs, right? As soon as the priest pointed at Sojiro, he could move again. The pressure weighing on his shoulders lifted, along with the fear in his heart. Could he help? Would he expose Aoko and Alice to more danger? All such doubts had
行
vanished.
きます
I'm heading
縁
out
が残
then.
っていれば
With any luck, we'll meet again.
はい
Good.
なんであれ
Whatever
後
happens,
悔のない一日
no regrets. And with that, Sojiro began to run, as Father Airi watched with a look of satisfaction. The priest knew if he could not persuade Aoko, he could not convince Sojiro either. He watched the impetuous boy run away as the blind nun listened to his footsteps fade into the distance. Yuiko was different from Sojiro and the priest. While she showed no mercy to corruption or self-righteousness, she embraced benevolence to the innocent. Such an ordinary boy, with his life ahead of him. And yet he chose to follow heretics into hell.
最悪ですね
How can you live with yourself, Father Eri?
分別
Is he saying Eddie?
のつかない
Eddie? I don't
子供
know.
を導くの
I thought responsible adults guided wayward children. She made no effort to hide her biting disapproval. It was simply her way of showing concern for the boy. Father Eri shrugged.
だから
You're
いろいろと
mistaken about a
間違
few
えています
things,
よ
Sister Yuika.
責任のある大人
Your use of the term responsible adult, for a start.
何が起き
An
ても
adult is someone who takes responsibility no matter what. The rest went unspoken. It didn't matter to him which of them died. With a warm, goodly smile, the priest corrected the nun's misunderstanding. Oh, and there we go. That's chapter 11 done, which on the Holy Nights, part 2. Here we go. I don't know. Are we close to the end, fellas? This feels like a climax. I actually have no idea how long this game is going to be. Steins Gate was really, really long. And I had multiple endings, and I have no idea if there's any such thing for this game, but we press forward. I'm concerned, but I am excited. And I feel determined, too. I mean, Shizuki rubbed off on me in that sense. I hope that he can do something, because this does feel a little hopeless. The golden wolf's ear stood pointed, twitching in response to the sounds around it. Its meal finished, it curled up into a ball in anticipation of nap time, and yawned, half from boredom. The old abandoned classroom had fulfilled its purpose many moons ago. For a month, the wolf had spent his time resting on top a heap of disheveled desks. His name was Lu Beowulf. He was a purebred werewolf named after the sun at his birthplace and a hero of legend upon leaving there. Okay. It goes without saying he was not from this country. He came from a land deep within the European wilderness, surrounded by mountains and forests. His homeland was a realm no human had ever set foot in. In their isolated world forgotten by time, a diminishing race of werewolves lived in peace. This was where Beo first appeared. In a cave on the outskirts of their village, the werewolves found a child bearing the same golden coat as their ancestors. The child was sleeping soundly, as if in his natural habitat. The village welcomed their new member with open arms. 2,000 years of advancing civilization had been cruel to them. As the forests were destroyed, valleys unearthed, and waters polluted, the werewolf birth rate dwindled. They were now facing one birth a decade. The child's golden coat, deviating from the typical gray or white and shared only by their ancestors who were treated as gods, felt like a sign their prayers had been answered. A bloodline in atrophy. The werewolves were forced to embrace change. This radiant child at least temporarily made them forget about their troubles. Alas, as time passed, their hopes turned to disappointment. The golden wolf was not their salvation. For some reason, Lu, that ray of golden sun, remained a child. Decades passed and still he did not grow, forever young, immortal, cursed. He searched the village for his birth mother, but to no avail. He searched the village for someone who understood his plight, but to no avail. Over hundreds of years, he came to realize something. He was different. Very different. Neither male nor female, neither strong nor weak. Ignorant of life and death, joy and fear. That thing's a spirit born of nature. Might look like us werewolves, but don't let that fool you. Wonder who said that? But the child himself needed not conjecture to know his own true nature. He was perfect. And therefore he was alone. To the golden wolf, the world was too small, and that was why. Indeed, that was the very reason he wanted to know what life was. He wanted to know loss. If he was all-powerful, he wanted to know the mystery behind his all-powerfulness. Because as it was, his existence was meaningless. The golden wolf was at a loss, as were the werewolves around him. They revered him, but at the same time wanted nothing to do with him. Lu moved back to the cave he was discovered in and resigned himself to a life of seclusion. Like the sun god Lu? I thought it was short for Luger. Oh, this is Toko. One heck of a coincidence, and then one day a quirky mage visited the village. There you go. You're too loud, Miss Toko. Why do you have to be so dramatic all the time? From his place on top of the rubble, Beo peered into the hallway. He thought his fussy master was busy dealing with Misaki City's ley lines, but she was engrossed in making traps. One month passed since they made the dilapidated building their makeshift workshop. Creating a new trap for intruders became a daily pursuit of Toko's. You worry about your safety, but what about the other creatures? Having been like this since birth, and knowing neither infancy nor dotage, he thought differently than others. For he was perfect from the day he was born, never declining, never improving. As such, he had no comprehension of weakness. Childlike, fickle, and without morals, he had no concept of good and bad as either a human or a wolf. A beautiful creature, disconnected entirely from the world around him, he was on top of all other creatures. With one exception. His master, Toko Azaki. She showed him a sparkling, delicious world, and above all, he found her scent refreshing. To him, the world was divided into what was cool and what was not. Your preference and leisure pursuits were of no consequence to him, and he never took gender into account. The only thing that mattered to him was whether a person's life was logical and therefore cool. Toko Azaki had her faults, but she smelled good. Finished your lunch? Alright. Enter the classroom. It's showtime tonight, just keep it together until then. Sometimes, like now, she would nag him, but on the whole, his master pleased him. In reality, the contract binding her to him was not particularly powerful. If he wanted to, he could tear her to pieces at any time. No human could restrain him. However, he had no intention of killing Toko in exchange for his freedom, and there was a reason for this. In order to move about freely in human society, he needed someone like her. As long as she did not offend him, he had no reason to rock the boat. However, the main event, I was getting tired of waiting. The promise she had made him in his cave and the reality of their situation had begun to come apart at the seams. Come here, I'll let you fight the most powerful mystic there is. He was compliant up to now, but his patience was wearing thin. The fight with the newest magician last night was an enormous letdown.
そういうな。私も昨日は拍子抜けだったんだから。
I was just as disappointed as you were.
実はあの子
I'm not that bummed, but why won't the girl use it? Because she can't? His master's expression turned serious, not in agreement at the wolf's question, though. For she had already asked herself the same and many other similar questions. Because she'd be better off dying than to use it, I suppose. That doesn't make any sense. She almost died because she didn't use it, which proves my point. That it must be too terrifying to use, Toko finished in her head. She stopped short of voicing it and chuckled at her emotional outburst.
どれほどのものかそう。
Can't you imagine what it must be? Whatever sort of miraculous mystic her magic is, as long as she remains a mage, she can't win. Okay. Emphasizing that his role in all this was to face Aoko only at that very moment.
魔法
True magic. The bored look in his eyes shifted. He recalled the taste of that girl, his long tongue sliding over his chainsaw-like fangs. Make no mistake, he would finish his meal. He was the oldest werewolf, the golden god of the forest. For as long as he could remember, no. From the moment he appeared, he had been the most powerful creature of all. All man-made mystics were trash before him. Magecraft was laughable, and even mystics, artificial miracles, were futile. Their very existence was an insult to him.
もちろん
After all, that was the deal. When the
ちゃ
time
んと
comes,
平らげはするけれど
I dig right in. That was the extent of their pact. Once he had dealt with this so-called true magic, he was free. His eyes burned with the wolf inside of him, his fanged maw twisting into a sadistic, beastly grin. Is this the figure that we saw Aoko dealing with when she was in the amusement park? The shadowy thing that was following her? Oh, here we go. Chapter 12. Witch on the Holy Night Part 2. Just past 7 p.m. Old school building. Got light. Nothing unusual. Old building, now still covered in yesterday's snow, is rarely used. No signs of life. Remain that way until the start of the new semester. Forest grew darker by the minute. If the building had died just under 2 weeks of vacation, what had become of forest over the years? There you go. An entirely otherworldly realm.
この辺り
Blocking out all the noise and
それ
light. No
どう
traps.
するの
Sneak into the building?
まさか
You can walk,
隠れても
dude?
意味はないし
And what would we do once we were in our hideout? We're not here to steal anything.
後ろから
Element of surprise?
それができれば苦労はない
If we could do
んだ
that,
けど
it'd make
ね
our job easier, but playing ninja isn't really my thing.
忍者の真似事は私
Or yours, for that
そも
matter.
そも
And anyway.
やる気満々
Anyway,
な
we're
の
not the only ones out for blood tonight. The sound of their footsteps stopped in unison. The old, forgotten Misaki High School building stood before them. What used to be the schoolyard was now a barren snowscape. Reclaimed by the forest, the building looked like a shell of its former self. The surrounding trees resembled standing mourners at a funeral. Whose, though?
せっかちなお嬢さん
Who's to
方
say?
タイムリミットまで
There's still
あと
4
4
hours
時間は
until
あ
the
ると
time
思う
limit. Alone in the middle of the white altar was the lone, scarred red mage. As she came out from the forest, Aoko lowered herself slightly, scowling at her distant target. Next to her, Alice stood motionless. And here, fellas, we find ourselves in a standoff. I could not tell you if we are nearing the end of the game. You guys would know. I would not. But to be completely honest with you, I have no idea how this is going to end. I feel like there are so many things that we didn't get to know. They kept a lot of things from us up until the very last minute, and that's good. I like that. It feels like a lot of things fell into place right before all of this. And this, this fated fight, but I don't know if we've got much game left, and I don't know how they're going to resolve everything. Much less the character relationships and the payoffs that they built up to. I don't know. We'll have to see. First, we got to get through this Mexican standoff. Hello, you two. The bare branches of the trees cast long, thorny shadows. Aoko was reminded of Sleeping Beauty. Except this mage wasn't nearly as pleasant as the princess in that. Not to mention she wasn't sleeping, and there was no prince. Regardless, this princess came out of her schoolhouse castle to greet her challengers.
その体で無理をして
Pushing yourself in that
あなた
condition?
のそういうところ
You do make your big sister worry,
姉としてどうか-
Aoko. Toko grinned faintly. Aoko fought back the urge to respond. Meanwhile, Alice stood in silence, uninterested in sibling rivalry. Toko stood about 100 feet away. With their senses sharpened through magecraft and the silence of the forest, they could hear each other perfectly. The golden wolf was nowhere to be seen. Toko faced the two girls alone. Alice's black overcoat and winter hat were typical items of clothing for a mage battle. A few paces in front of her was Aoko, whose combat garb was comparatively out of place. A Misaki High School uniform. She had asked Alice to bring a change of clothes for her, but there must have been some misunderstanding. Though it was a trivial miscommunication, Toko seemed to think it had some special meaning.
ところで
Before we
始める前
start,
に一ついいかな
mind if I ask something?
気になって
I can't help but be
仕方がないし
curious, and this is
この
probably
先機会
my
もない
last
だろ
chance
う
to
から
ask,
聞くんだ
but
けど
is that seriously
Anata no
what you're going to
sentou
fight in,
desu.
Aoko? Toko spoke clearly and despite the distance was able to communicate her deep-seated scorn without trouble. Aoko would rather attack than engage in small talk, but she decided to take the bait.
そんなわけないでしょ
Don't lie. You've had plenty of chances to ask me, 4 times including today. Well,
私はまだ現
this is
役
my
だから
job right now,
それ
so
も
I think
悪
it's
くはない
fitting.
かもしれないけど
Besides, my
いつか
fashion's
流行
ahead
る
of
で
the
しょ
times.
こういうのも
Aoko was sure to emphasize her words. For a split second, Toko's eyes narrowed.
呆れたな
Figures. Same bad taste as always.
それはどうも
Thanks. It's actually a relief hearing that from a creepy puppet maker. With that, the two fell silent and glared at each other. Their bloodlust cut through the thick, cold air like a knife. While the two of them sized each other up, Alice surveyed the area around Toko. There was no indication anyone or anything was lying in wait near her. Perhaps she should see if the werewolf was still in the old school building. Maybe Toko didn't feel like Aoko and Alice were much of a threat in their injured state. Or was she really not expecting a counterattack so early so the werewolf wasn't ready? After some contemplation, Alice surmised it was the former. She really was going to fight alone. Her arsenal comprised her mystic eyes and rune magecraft. That was more than enough to deal with Aoko and Alice in their current state. Alice, all I need is one shot. Aoko signaled to Alice behind her with the movement of her finger. Alice had no objections. The original plan was for her to keep the werewolf busy. With the mirror as a backup, Aoko was hoping to catch Toko off guard. They had a few other cards up their sleeves, but the fact remained that as mages, their attacks wouldn't affect the werewolf, so they decided to ignore it and focus on taking out Toko. Not the best strategy, but it was all the two of them could come up with. But they had been thrown a curveball. Toko had the upper hand, so she was reluctant to use the beast. Aoko wasn't about to let this opportunity go to waste. By distracting her with sibling banter, she would settle things before the werewolf even showed up.
じゃあ今度は
My turn to ask a question.
どう
How are the fields working out?
まさか
Oh, please, it's barely been a day. I haven't touched them
まだ
yet.
手をつけてもいない
Can't rush these
大体
things. Besides, I want what's inside the ley lines, not the bounded fields. I have no plans to reset them.
まあ
Tearing into you is probably way faster than tearing into the land anyway.
やっぱ
I
りそ
see.
れが目的だったのね
Okay, so she didn't even... Maybe she didn't even
な
attack
ら
them?
なおのこと
I
あん
can't
たを
let you
守
become a magician. Aoko's blue eyes burned brightly with a fiery fighting spirit. Even though her sister was ready to pounce, Toko remained motionless but for her mouth, which twisted into a
魔
smirk.
法使い
A magician, huh?
確かにまだ執着はあるね
I like the sound of that.
私には移
The
植
magic
されな
crests
か
that
った
weren't
魔術
implanted in
国
me and the true magic of the
青
Aozaki
塚が
family.
いいよ
But it's
欲しく
fine.
はあるが到達
I
す
do
れば
want
どち
them,
ら
but
も
I
自
can
分で
get
用
them
意で
on
き
my
る
own.
それとも
Oh, wait. Did you come here to show me your magic, Aoko? Toko's words came out flatly, but her eyes mocked her sister. It was true, however, that if Aoko wanted to defeat Toko, her best chance would be to use this mysterious true magic. The only problem was that she couldn't. If she could, she would have used it to avoid being mauled last night. Aoko Aozaki couldn't use true magic. Toko believed she needed to fulfill some kind of condition. The protection their grandfather placed on the formula was to prohibit miracles from being easily realized. However, that wasn't because he was concerned about the human world. It was no exaggeration to say he'd feel nothing if magic leveled the entire city. The truth was, true magic never had any conditions. Aoko was being held back by trauma. These 5 privileges, the only powers of their kind, were bound by cognitive seals. That's why Toko looked down on her naive little sister. So weak. A body incapable of handling magic could be cut down with a mere sword. Aoko knew that better than anyone else, which is why she couldn't forgive her sister's ridicule. Just try using true magic, huh? A pathetic taunt. If that was how she wanted to play, then so be it.
ええ。お望みとあらばね。
Have it your way, she says. Alrighty. Fellas, we're in it. We're in it to win it, perhaps for the last time. I could not tell you. Let's get moving. With a burst of pure rage, Aoko made her move. Her colorless shoes sped across the untainted snow field, like a stone skipping across the water. As Aoko charged forward, she disappeared. Only her footprints advanced like bullet holes in the snow. Toko held her ground. Concealment was elementary magecraft. More than likely, the power came from one of Alice's trinkets. It was a simple yet effective countermeasure to Mystic Eyes. Toko's Mystic Eyes used the lock property to bind an opponent. It did not have the Logos property to discern truth through an illusion. Once a magecraft's workings were revealed, its weakness was exposed.
足癖が悪いのも
Still the same sloppy footwork. In a mere 4 seconds, her opponent had closed 10 yards and was still speeding up. It appeared that she had given up on a mage battle and was going to move in for melee. The other girl, Alice Quandary, didn't take a single step.
被弾覚悟のと
A suicide charge opened her friendly
ア
fire
リス
from
か
the
ら
rear.
5でももらっているのでしょ
Even with Alice's protection, this is
反
dumb.
省なさい
You'll regret this,
切り
Aoko.
札という
Your
もの
trump card has to come from your own deck. Sneering, Toko raised her left arm, holding it out in front of her threateningly. 10 more yards. Unfortunately, her footprints gave away her position. Oh! Toko began engraving a rune into the air, but before she could finish, Aoko's footprint stopped. She was still too far away for close combat. What a strange place to end her attack. No, wait. Could she really stop so suddenly at that speed?
とんだく
She jumped. Oh shit! Toko made a snap decision. She quickly raised her outstretched arm toward the sky as if saluting the moon.
添える
Oh! Did it get her? Flames tore through the air, the rune carved into the body above her, bathing it in a pillar of flames. No internal resistance spell could help. Rather than simply burning their target, the runes wrapped them in a wreath of flame. Yeah, okay. The assailant screamed, fell onto the snow-covered ground. In agony, she extended a burning hand out from the hellish fire as if begging for mercy. It was the stuff of nightmares. Burn the attacker alive. Chirp. Chirp. The movement was far too theatrical to be Aoko. Toko had already turned her gaze to Alice. She hadn't been watching the burning corpse at all. Toko knew it wasn't Aoko from the moment the body fell to the ground. Another dumb Mindster familiar. Irritated, Toko glared at Alice. While Aoko had vanished into thin air, she hadn't moved at all. Blue energy traced a circle around where she stood. It was force to fourth. A 4-bar grand magecraft, mobilizing her magic crest. Toko only had single action runes. No, she hadn't mastered anything above 2 bars to begin with. This torrent of energy was too much to handle.
えい言わず
The rune formed in the magic circle. Oh! Awaz, the rune of withdrawal, was evoked, and Aoko's concealment was undone, allowing Toko to utilize her mystic eyes. Within her open pupil, the infinitely mirrored eyes captured their target in an endless hell. Oh! Oh, she's seeing double? But the mage's sight was literally split in 2? The space in front of Aoko was distorted, obscuring her form like an icy mist. If Toko's eye was like opposing mirrors, then this was like sticking a one-way mirror at the triangulation point. With her vision split in 2, she couldn't lock onto Aoko.
御水の鏡の効果
The mirror of slumber,
青
Toko.
子は鏡の
Aoko's deep in the fork, in the road the mirror creates. From where you are, you'll never be able to see her. Alice explained without concern. Due to the herb Toko made Alice swallow, she was still unable to use her own magecraft. However, she could use ploys already in motion without using magical energy, such as the mansion's mirror and the aimless little blue bird. Finally, the magic bullet was loaded.
ルートディレクトカー
Oh my god, she's gonna I love that she's just a cannon. I love that she's literally just a glass cannon. It's so fun. Look at her go. Whee! Raising her right arm to reveal her luminescent crests, Aoko took aim at her target 100 feet ahead. So what I don't understand, one thing that I don't know, is this passed down? Does she have natural talent? But she wasn't supposed to inherit this in the first place. It was supposed to be Toko, but her grandfather raised both of them because she knew, or her grandfather knew this was going to happen in the first place? I don't know. I just know that she's somehow super duper powerful. Magical energy coursed through her gun barrel arm. From the moment she had received Alice's invisibility, Aoko had begun chanting her magecraft. It took Toko a few seconds to notice. Aoko produced more spins in the awakened magic circuits than she had ever done before. She readied not snap, nor draw. Instead, she advanced past her third process, a compression of magical energy, magic blow. If she fired the blue ether that gathered before her, it would fly with the force of 10 tons. Using her magic crest to multiply the energy and machine gun her target, it was enough power to oh my god, to demolish even the old building behind her. All right, here she goes. Aoko stared intensely at her sister, ready to fire. Toko had no time to counterattack or even the speed to evade. The fact that she didn't move implied she knew that better than anyone. Acceptance filled her eyes, not fear. Aoko didn't hesitate. She squeezed the trigger on her right hand. Yeah, Tor plan, Star Mine, Convergent launch. There she goes. Magic bullet configuration. Just a nuke of a shot. The last word came out like a scream. Oh my god. Under the impact of the ether, the surrounding snow melted and flew around. See, I don't even... Is this going to actually... She just obliterated on the spot, or... I don't know. It looks like blood has splattered. Toko was engulfed in dirt. I don't know if that's blood, actually. Not sure. No way she could survive Aoko's magic bullet. It contained every bit of Aoko's magical energy she could muster. Viewing the chaos, Aoko confirmed her victory. And yet somehow she felt bitter. But then... choosing to deal with the torrent of magical energy she swallowed up later, Toko tutted at Aoko's childishness. Her disappointment was so deep it bordered on despair. It's a little too late now, but listen up anyway, Aoko. Never play your trump card first. You'll lose. Her voice cold and aloof, she was completely unscathed. The mage stood in the snowfield, not a single speck of dirt on her overcoat. Just before the bullet reached Toko, she deflected it with magical energy of the same level. Aoko could only stare at the scene before her. The negation of her magecraft hadn't shocked her, though. Leaf-like objects floated behind her sister. Aoko stared like she was living a nightmare. Countless magic crests poured out from Toko's back. It all happened in an instant. The magic bullet approaching like a tsunami. Toko lightly snapped her fingers, causing a stream of letters to rush out from behind her. Text became art, golden flowers bloomed. There must have been hundreds. All sorts of magecraft from even beyond Western Europe. The kind normally carved into the flesh of a mage, the kind Toko Ozaki shouldn't possess. The kind only followers of those schools should know. Blossoming magic crests, brighter than the moon. Inscribed in the air, they formed a totem pole, a guardian beast to protect Toko. Now you see, I don't need to rely on just Bayo. Toko's expression was steely. Victory was in her grasp, and there was no room to rest on her laurels. So it was the mirror that concealed you. You used it to detect, capture, and act as backup. Impressive. Not quite one of the great three, but a very versatile and, might I add, exceptional ploy. Quit patronizing us. You're just upset you got duped. Not at all. I'm just giving credit where credit's due. It was me who worked with Mindstar on the thing in the first place. I'm just kind of annoyed that someone got carried away and couldn't help but add functions to it. And then the little Robin coming at me disguised as you. You used it to distract me with it while you charged up your huge attack. Alice avoided my mystic eyes while you focused on offense. Not a bad plan. You know, all in all, you did pretty well. Toko recounted their strategy, sharing her impressions as she went. Aoko could not take her eyes off Toko's blooming magic crest. Only Alice was paying close attention to Toko's words. End of the line. It's such a shame, Toko. Or Aoko. I can't believe you're still using such magecraft after 2 years. You could have become a world-class marksman. Toko snapped her fingers again. The floating crest began to glow more brightly. Alice? What are those? Aoko whispered to Alice standing next to her as she held her hand. She could not risk turning around. The second she took her eye off Toko, the fight would be over. Magic crest, as hard as it is to believe, shock and discomfort. Magic crests were passed down through a family line and took unique forms. At heart, they were merely personalized inscriptions and technically no different from grimoires. However, the reality was far different. Magecraft had no set form. Without a set shape, the ability to recreate mystics was itself flawed. To craft it into a form required an immeasurable investment of time and devotion. Magic crests were the crystallization of a family's desires and ambitions and proof of a successor's lineage. Crests had no effect on their own, but they were the ultimate symbol of a family. If no mage was willing to imbue themselves with a crest or lacked the resolve to merge with it, then the crest's meaning was lost. That was the key difference between a crest and a mere spellbook. Crests could not be shared, and imitating them was pointless. It only stood to reason, then, that even if the crest manifesting behind Toko belonged to someone else, only the original owner could benefit from them. Those crests have to be what's deflecting my magic bullets. Don't tell me she's... Searching for answers, Aoko squinted her eyes as she glared at Toko. She knew that copying a crest had no purpose. Only the original inheritor could invoke one. One conclusion. If they aren't inscribed on your skin and just floating in the air. Aoko spat a curse at her sister. Toko nodded, pleased at her enemy's quick wit. The crest didn't suit my body, so I fixed them to the space behind me. Of course, crests like yours that are engraved into the flesh are much better, because they can be activated in one go. For me, though, this was the only one. And while I do need to perform an extra step to activate them, they're not mine. So I don't feel any pain. And it seemed neither physically nor mentally. Aoko knew her sister was inhuman, but she never thought she would go this far. You stole them from someone else, so your bloodline can never match up, which means the person or persons you stole them from can't die. So you must have them locked up somewhere. If they died, you couldn't activate their crests. So this is like a bastardization of how magecraft works. It's very low and dishonorable of her. I don't remember anyone complaining. They were asking for it. They should have been better prepared if they wanted to face me. There were some rather rude fools who used questionable language, but I think I've been quite kind, really. They came to kill me, and I let them live. Really? As a fellow mage, I only hope they're okay. You're probably wondering what I've done to them. Preserved their brains, lumped them all into a ball of flesh. As if I'd do that, I built them a cafe and provided plenty of food, entertainment, sleep, and freedom. Live like that forever, huh? Toko's words were hardly believable, but it was clear her crests weren't copies. What Toko had described had no discernible benefit in her mind. Why'd she done this? It would have been more efficient to break down the crests into components and make replicas. She could have made a much more powerful puppet with those crests. It would have made a pawn loyal to her every command at that. Much more useful than any enslaved mage. That's Toko for you. When she decides to do something, that's it. Everything's a means to an end. Listen to this. One time we were watching TV and a pizza commercial came on. We both really wanted to eat something greasy. Only had the pepperoni. Top of the big hill. Getting to the city took an hour. But I just had to have that pizza, so I walked it. Could I find a pizza place? Nope, so I walked home empty-handed. Okay. Hungry and tired. My damn sister waved at me, all welcome back with a big slice of pizza hanging out of her stupid face. Tried using rice crackers as a base. When I looked outside, 3 chickens and 1 cow were gone. That's when I realized she had no concept of the value of money, hard work, or fairness. Okay. Cool. Stupid crap like that means I'm perfectly fine with putting a hole through her chest with a gander shot. I mean, she could have just chanted a single verse from the Gematria to get the same effect, but no! She was so obsessed with curses, she made a puppet that couldn't even fly. Okay, sure. Toko had done it on purpose to annoy her. Toko furrowed her eyebrows at Aoko's verbal assault. Speaking rudely about her prized puppet was crossing the line. That puppet had you on the ropes. Cabal a secret, rune specialist, so I don't need to learn anything and everything like you do. Did learn something. One owner of these crests taught me about Celtic-bounded fields. Its shine was ever radiant, proving that its magecraft was active. And then you sealed away grandfather, trapped that half-yokai druid monk in a tower. Like that red mailbox you broke, remember? About that big, but it's a cute little bird cage. A bit cramped for one person, but grandfather's more spirit than body, so I guess it's more appropriate for him anyway. Okay. Her smile betraying the long festering hatred she still clung to. Can't use this for a while. If he'd used true magic, a 3-line crest wouldn't have countered it. You only lost by a slight margin, Aoko. You should be proud. Right then. Let's wrap this up. Feel free to fight back, but remember, you're against Bayo. Toko snapped her fingers one more time. The golden werewolf was hiding in this old school building. The signal to him echoed eerily through the surrounding woods, and before the echo stopped, Aoko shouted back at Alice. All right. The order sounded like a reprimand, but Alice silently obeyed. Without hesitation, she left Aoko behind to handle Toko and made for the forest. If defeat was inevitable, it would be pointless for both of them to die. If one of them could survive, there could be a round 3. That was why Aoko decided to be the sacrificial pawn.
トウコ自身の切り札も分かったし
Now we know what Toko's trump card is. If Alice can get back to normal, she'll stand a chance. Aoko muttered bitterly to herself as Alice's feet crunched through the snow. I just saw her shadow leave in the background there. Instead of cursing her own death, she cursed the fact she would not see Alice defeat Toko. For what else was there to curse except this? Feeling her fellow mage's presence fade, Aoko continued to glare at her
い
sister.
つまでじらす気
You know, I hate it when people make me wait. The werewolf Toko had called was nowhere to be seen. It should not have taken him more than a few seconds to come flying out of the old school
そうせ
building.
くな今赤ずきんを追
What's
っ
the
てい
big
るところ
hurry?
だ
He's after Little Red Riding Hood for the time
お帽
being.
子の彼女をそう
Or rather,
考え
Little Black Hat to force the metaphor. Her tone reeked of irony. The words traveled aimlessly across the schoolyard like a rambling announcement. Aoko stood frozen and dumbfounded. Everything Toko was saying seemed so far away from reality. Aoko was done with being fooled, so she turned around. The moonlight shining off of the fallen snow allowed her to see far into the forest. From the white darkness, a lone boy came into view, walking toward her. He could not have been any taller with Aoko's chest, but he carried Alice over his shoulder with ease. As if she was nothing, he tossed her body upward. She arced through the air for several feet before dropping headfirst before Aoko's eyes. Her neck would snap on impact. Did she catch her? Even though she was wiser not to, Aoko reached out and caught her. Aoko's light body weighed heavy as she fell into Aoko's arms. The stitches on her wounds tore, dyeing Aoko's arms crimson. Okay, fellas, we're really in it now. Are you still... She was conscious. The werewolf must have ambushed her right after she ran into the woods. Alice bled heavily from where the wolf tore her abdomen open last night, just like he had done to
初めか
Aoko.
ら森に潜ませていた
You were in the woods this entire time. She gently lay her body down.
つまりあれよね
Ah,
甘く見ていた
shit.
ふりで
A wolf in a little boy's clothing. Look at this little asshole. Fuck, I hate him. Ugh. Cause he's so like, oh, he's so perfect and he doesn't know morality and like he's so disconnected from the world because he's so perfect and so he doesn't evolve or improve. He's like a little, and he's a little boy character too. Derogatory. Well, God. Twinkling with excitement at the brutality to come, the blonde hair and green eyes she saw last night and his effeminate features now seemed ethereal.
ベオ今日はく
You'll feast tonight, Bayo. The boy's grin broadened. Nobody could have expected what came next. Aoko rushed headfirst at the boy. Faster than the robin decoy, she sped, blood dripping from both arms. Toko watched wide-eyed at the spectacle. Alice could only look on with vacant eyes as she lay helplessly on the ground. The werewolf boy was caught off guard by the prey becoming predator. Aoko crossed a 20-foot gap in a second before planting a foot in the snow. It arrested her momentum and pivoted her body like a top. Even if he instantly understood what was coming, the boy wouldn't be able to dodge in time. Using the momentum from her sprint, she pushed her leg into the ground and sprang up. With deadly timing, her roundhouse kick swung in a wide arc toward the boy's neck, sending an explosion of force to his brainstem. I mean, he's gonna be fine, right? It was an expert display of martial arts strengthened by magical energy. She'd gotten the hang of close combat while fighting Toko's puppets. The violent kick was powerful enough to shatter a tree trunk. I mean, she's doing it, I guess, but like, the boy did not move. Aoko's right shin connected firmly and stopped. Oh, Aoko. A shockwave rippled through his neck. It was the same feedback Aoko had felt when she destroyed the puppet. Even if he wasn't defeated, she had to have severely damaged his spine. As she looked at him to confirm her kill, the boy simply stared back at her, not even bothering to twitch an eyebrow.
お姉さんの右足は
That must be the leg I
それで首を
bit.
狙ったのはすごいよね
I can't believe you went for my neck like that. I mean, wow. Miss Toko said that girls instinctively try to spare their own bodies. It was a valiant move, but you wasted it. My hair is as strong as when I'm a wolf. Even my peach fuzz can stop your kick. The only one hurt between the two was Aoko. The leg she had lodged in his neck was totally numb, like it had been chopped clean off with a hatchet. You held back a bit too, right? You wanted to protect your leg, I guess. Humans need to forget that kind of thing when fighting me. Shit. shit. She could not free her leg. No doubt as soon as she regained her footing, he would tear her stomach
どっ
open.
ちにしろミンチだから
Well,
気にしても仕
you're
方がない
mincemeat
よね
anyway, so I guess it doesn't matter.
ほらもったいない
See?
せっ
What
か
a
く治っ
waste.
たば
And it just healed up too. Alko was not sure, but it felt like he had sunk his finger into the flesh of her right leg. He was right about her leg. She barely had any feeling in it. It had been completely paralyzed after the last attack and was now back in the same horde state. Except this time, instead of being torn to pieces, it had been crushed to the bone. Her leg might have been numb, but just the look of it was enough to horrify her. The way it was crumpled, all that blood, any normal person would have died from shock. As if thinking about someone else, Alko considered how cruel magic crests could be.
まだ目がし
Still some life in your eyes? I don't really want to torture you. You should drop the tough act. Okay, alright, oh my god. The boy thrust his hand out at Alko's chest. Her consciousness flickered from the sudden pain of a stake. No, a child's fist piercing her torso. The scenery flew by. She soared through the air like a rag doll tossed away by a bored child. Just like Alice a moment ago, she tumbled through the air and hit the ground hard. Her right leg was crushed. Her chest caved in. It was as if her heart had been scooped out of... Alright, fellas, if you want to skip, now's probably the time. But if you skip to a part... maybe I'll give you a timestamp, I don't know. But at the very least, if you skip to a part where you don't know what's happening, go back at intervals so you can at least figure out what's going on. Was this what it was like to see stars? The terrifying part was the pain. It never let up. She could still see his fist. Leisurely, the boy strolled across the snow toward Alko's broken body, his red tongue gliding over his lips. His eyes filled with glee. Alko bit down the temptation to drift away, even though she could find no reason to fight on. The snow had broken her fall slightly, but her death was all but certain. The fist-sized crater in her chest and her mangled leg made sure of that. Even though she knew she was a broken mess. Her magic crest frantically worked to resuscitate her heart, but why? Oh, Toko. Hey. The sight of Toko in the distance was the only thing that kept her conscious. Her sister looked surprised for some reason. Like she was witnessing some strange phenomenon that wasn't like her. Wondering what it was, Alko tried to stay conscious. What's happening? Feebly trying to raise her head, she looked to where Toko was staring. Why did she look like that when she was so close to victory? Oh my man. Oh my god. He's on his way. Fellas, he is on his way. His heart was beating faster than normal. The fragmented and disturbing images kept returning, and he desperately pushed them to the back of his mind. Oh, okay, God. There were thoughts that shook his resolve. He did his best to file them away into an unseen corner of his consciousness. Right now, he could only focus on controlling his breathing and his exertion. Just stay calm, he repeated to himself. He had not stopped for a second since leaving the church, even without giving a thought to what he would do next. So many traffic lights, so many people. It was Christmas. There was no way he would find a taxi. Waiting for one was not an option. It was why he had put his trust in his legs. He dashed through the city streets. He had to find a shorter route than last night. Is this where... We saw it in the beginning. It's not like they didn't set this up. Is this where his whole, like, I don't know, something cat seems to come into play, where he was on a delivery and before he even knew Alice, and Alice saw a black cat? Or no, wait, shoot, is that the other way around? I might be forgetting things. Regardless, he's got something going on. When he came down from the mountains, he had that wrap around his neck. He had those scars all over his body. Guys, they've been setting something up for a minute. I think we're about to see it. His heart was ready to jump out of his chest, pounding like a hammer against a fire bell. He had no intention of giving up yet, but he could not seem to calm himself down. In his precarious condition, even surrender seemed too great of an effort to spare. Visions of horrible outcomes flashed through his mind. No. Calm. He needed to stay calm. That was his only weapon. He was painfully aware he was powerless. The best thing he could do was to keep his head on straight. While he wrangled with his mind, his pulse seemed to quicken with every step. The forest was faintly lit by the moon. That was more than enough on such a bare mountain. He followed the two sets of footprints. Ahead lay a situation he had nothing to do with, just like at the amusement park. Even if you go, there's nothing you can do for them. The only effect her admonishing words had was to hasten his pace. He pushed the ground with his legs even harder, trying to leave his doubt in the kicked-up snow behind him. Of course he was powerless. The pain in his chest told him so. At best, he would be useless, and at the worst, he would be a liability. He recalled the binding spell placed on him at the church. It did not matter. His body told him he would regret being torn to pieces less than if he did nothing. Not once did his legs fail him as he ran through the woods, though it felt as though his heart could at any moment. His weakness screamed at him from within. Just like back at the amusement park. He was beyond reason or circumstances now. Ultimately, I just want to help her. That was all he really desired. His heart pounded with vigor. As he ran through the dark, wintry forest, only one thing gnawed at his mind, not concern for the girls, nor anger toward Toko. The red roses bursting forth from her limbs, screams of agony like childbirth, the harsh reality of something beautiful dying. The nightmare was tenacious. Never again, never ever again did he want to see something like that again, if he could help it. Just ahead was the forest clearing. The moonlight shone on the old school building like a spotlight, and once again those thoughts crept back. He could not bear seeing something like that again. That was why he ran. But if he had to face it a second time, how could he stay calm? Yep. With that in mind, he arrived at the clearing. Somehow, his frantic breathing, his rising and lowering shoulders stopped. No exhaustion, no inertia, just blankness, like his mind was frozen in time. This was the second time he felt like this. But the nausea and dizziness from the first time, the pathetic whining of the last few weeks, the doubts clouding his mind, they were all gone. Displaced entirely from his mind by an even stronger emotion. His heart pounded with the force of a sledgehammer. It was a primal sound, loud enough to bring him to his senses. Dude, my man's about to unleash a breathing technique from Demon Slayer. Oh, he's about to go buck wild. Uh-oh. Sojiro stepped into the clearing, letting out a deep but steady exhale. Although his eyes were locked with the blonde-haired boys, his concentration was focused inward. Be calm. Be calm. Every fiber of his being worked to control his breathing. The clearing told the story of Alko and Alice's crushing defeat. Alko was lying face up in the snow, her right leg bright red and crushed at the thigh. Her eyes were glazed over, but Sojiro could tell she was still bravely fighting. Judging by her spluttering, she had taken a hard blow to her chest or back. Sojiro deduced it was most likely both. Alice's injuries seemed less serious than Alko's, but she lay motionless on the ground nevertheless. She was lying across from Alko, face down in the snow, arms out in front as though pushing herself up was too painful. Before the old school building stood the figure of the mage he had seen before. Paying her no mind, Sojiro began to walk forward. Feeling calmer since arriving at the clearing, he advanced toward Alko. Toko did nothing to stop him. No one noticed, but the faintest look of worry flickered in her eyes.
お兄さんもその人たちの仲
Are you
間
a friend of theirs, mister? The child werewolf spoke amicably, confident in his victory. See, that's the thing about these kinds of characters. So omnipotent, all-powerful, never knowing defeat, never learning, never failing at all. When shit like this happens, about to get the sucker punch of his life, and perhaps also eyeing up a new meal. Sojiro ignored him and kept walking toward Aoko. The complete disregard wiped the smile from the boy's face. Still, Sojiro carried on. The beast's feelings were the last thing on his mind. Once he reached Aoko, he looked down at her with a pained expression on his face. Strangely, he was at a loss for words. After a slight hesitation, all he could manage to say was,
なってないぞ、生徒会長。
"That wasn't very polite, Miss President.
行く時ぐらい声をかけるもの
You shouldn't have left the church without saying goodbye." His awkward remark was half scolding and half affectionate.
このバカ
You numbskull. Despite the pain in her stomach, Aoko was able to throw an insult his way.
安心した余裕があ
Glad
る
to
じゃ
see
ない
you
か
still have some
青崎
fight in you. Aozaki. His voice brightened, as if buying her bravado. The truth was that she barely had the strength to live. Despite that, Sojiro looked like he wanted to respond in his usual way. Something like, "See, Aozaki, you're too tough to die, even when someone kills you."
あんた
You know, as soon as she tried to speak, she ran out of breath. Sojiro heard her loud and clear this time. He might have looked absent-minded, but he knew exactly how dangerous the situation was. Aoko knew because his carefree-sounding words did not match his expressionless face. What do you think you're... Before she could say doing, she coughed painfully. Sojiro pressed his finger to his lips and nodded. Aoko could not quite believe it, but it looked as though Sojiro had gestured to her not to speak. Isn't it
状況はあの
obvious?
時と一緒だ
It's the same as last time.
君がやられたら
If
次
you
は
go
こっちの番なんだ
down,
ろ
I step in, right?
だから協力をしに
So I'm here.
まあ何もできないのも
Okay, I still can't do anything, but still. Aoko did not know what to say. She could only look up at him, amazed and awed. The werewolf stared at him, visibly frustrated. After all, he believed himself to be the noblest of all creatures. Ignoring him was treason, punishable by death. Had Toko not been there, he would have sunk his teeth into Sojiro's neck by now. He was sure he had been intimidating enough. However, his prey did not show any signs of fear. It was hard to imagine, but maybe, just maybe, this guy did not view him as a threat.
まあ誰でもいいんだけど
As long as the
筋
meat
張
is
った
tender,
肉は
juicy, and
歯応え
filling, I don't care
先に
whose
そ
it
のお兄
is.
さんから始めても構
You
わ
don't
ない
mind if I start with you, do you? The boy wolf called out once again. Still,
まあ
oh, damn
誰
it.
でもいいん先にそのお兄さんから始めても構わないよね
The boy wolf called out once again. Still not responding, Sojiro raised a hand to his nose. Cool, calm, and collected. Paying no mind to the boy, yet keeping an eye on him.
匂うな
Something reeks.
Hmm?
Everyone present was confused. No one seemed to be able to smell anything but him.
へえ何が
What do
匂
you
う
smell, mister? Bale's voice retained his usual arrogance, but was tinged with impatience. The boy was unable to hide his irritation at being ignored. Finally, Sojiro turned to face the boy just a short distance from him.
品のない肉の匂いがする
It's like
俺だから
rotten
犬は嫌い
meat.
なんだ
This is why I hate dogs. His voice was filled with disgust and contempt. Sojiro was mainly speaking to himself, but the werewolf boy had never felt so insulted. Even if that was not Sojiro's intent at all. In a moment, the wind picked up, perhaps signaling a change in the werewolf's mood. A fiery gale whipped around, carving patterns in the snow.
ソジロ
Sensing he was about to be killed, Aoko desperately tried to move, but her broken body would not respond. Alice was unsuccessfully struggling to get to her feet too. In complete contrast, Sojiro stood there, firmly and unfazed. The little blonde boy's well of patience had run dry.
そうか要す
You're
るに
underestimating me because I look like a kid, huh?
お兄さんは
Big mistake. Lion time? Never mind. He's missing half a head. His time playing human was over. Enraged, the boy transformed. Golden fur sprouting from his pale flesh. Oh yeah, we're out here. We're out here, baby. His mouth grew razor-sharp fangs. His hands grew claws. Drawing from the magical energy in the air, he transformed into a preternatural beast, a wolf in the shape of a
中華の
human.
許しは出していないぞ
Did I say you could transform? Toka yelled at him, but the werewolf did not respond. He only huffed deep breaths of hot air. Did you really just... That was all Sojiro could say in response to the boy's metamorphosis. Such a transformation was the stuff of nightmares. What was worse, the beast now towered above him. It was enough to make anybody question reality itself. Amazing. Seeing his prey's reaction satisfied the werewolf, and his maw twisted into a satisfied grin. He was a strange one, this guy, but meat was meat. However, the beast's arrogance was short-lived. The prey breathed a sigh of exasperation before speaking.
それじゃあ本当に犬
You
その
really
ものじゃ
are
な
a
いか
dog. You could hear a pin drop, even in the snow. Alco, Alice, and Toko were all dumbfounded. Were they really seeing a human not just stare a werewolf down, but insult it to its face? They simply could not believe it. It was too late. Any trace of the wolf's pride or dignity faded away. The onlookers finally realized that the wolf was serious.
目を殺すな
Do not kill him, but Toko's command fell on deaf ears. The wolf prepared to lunge, his emerald eyes fixed on Sojiro not 30 feet in front of him. A mere 30 feet. A half second was all he needed. Another half second to bring his claw down and slice his prey from head to toe. Tear him asunder.
死んだよお前
You're dead! A roar of joyous, unbridled fury echoed far and wide. It was the only warning the werewolf gave as he exploded towards Sojiro. 1 second. A golden blur swept forth in a furious gust too fast for eyes to follow. In the face of unworldly speed, there was only one thing to do. Sojiro stepped forward, a silent shadow opposite the beastly silhouette of the incoming werewolf. He needed exactly 3 paces. He bet his entire life on around 3 feet of distance. In the blink of an eye, death would be upon him, yet he did not show the slightest indication he intended to avoid the lunging behemoth. The wolf's foreleg slammed into the ground with earth-shaking fury. His back muscles tensed up so much they seemed barely contained in his frame as he swept a raised paw downward. Sojiro's small step neatly evaded the claws, but he had a different motive. He was merely positioning himself for the next move. His intention was never to avoid anything. From the beginning, his mind was focused on but one thing. One point to aim for. One mind, one breath. He picked the perfect opening in the wolf's torso. The precise microsecond between contraction and relaxation. That one point alone was the crack in the dam of life. He's gonna... He punched the werewolf in its chest with his feeble human Oh my god, this is a goated image. Oh, he's my king. Oh my god. I can't believe it. I can't believe it, dude. Oh my god. Oh, dude, he sidestepped this fool and counterpunched him. With the full strength of his body, he pivoted. Oh my god, that is a left hook right there. Or a cross. I don't know. I don't know how he punched. Oh! There was a dull thud and a burst of blood. The twisted flesh and gore were all Sojiro's own. The werewolf's raised claw convulsed. From an insignificant impact, the beast's body was the first to collapse, then his spirit. There was a moment of utter incomprehension. The wolf opened his jaws to try and pull air into his lungs. Gasping, he began to topple forward. The slender figure slipped around to his flank. Sojiro? Oh! The next blow pierced him like a spear. Ignoring his mangled left arm, the silhouette whirled around and drove his right elbow into the collapsing werewolf's back. There was another muffled impact. The second strike penetrated to the exact same spot the first strike had, crushing the beast's heart. This time, the blood that flew into the air belonged to the gasping wolf. This is so metal. Oh my god. This image is the stuff of legends. The werewolf fell to the ground, choking on his own blood. He did not get up. He showed no sign of life. It was over. There was no remorse, no hesitation in that brief act of violence. The perfect, furious golden beast lay still, felled in a mere 3 seconds. No sane person would have bet on this outcome. Oh my god. Oh, guys. Look at him. That is my whole royal family right there. King, queen, prince, and princess. Oh my god. He's breathing calm. The victor stood over the fallen behemoth's body.
なんで僕が
But how? Even as the beast lay crumpled in the snow, he could not grasp what had happened. His heart had ruptured, cutting the blood flow to his body and brain, leaving him helpless. That much he knew. If he were a normal creature, he would be dead. As it was, this was a trifling inconvenience. Once his heart was repaired, his body would heal as well. It was not as if he had been struck by magecraft exceeding his own mystical nature. This was a little different than a grazed knee, which is what was so strange. Your heart does not stop from a grazed knee. What did I do wrong? The werewolf frantically searched his memory. He managed to remember right up until the moment he raised his claws, but what had come after that? Given the right transformation, he knew he could withstand even a cannon blast. How had a puny human dropped him? Wait. Before that, he had to figure out exactly what his opponent did to him. The moment he got in close, yes, he had felt a small impact. The attack was so accurate that it probably only affected his heart. Ridiculous. Even if that was possible, there was no way that that alone could stop a werewolf's heart. In the end, no matter how much he thought about it, nothing added up. The answer was out of reach for a werewolf with no knowledge of being backed into a corner, let alone the limits of human skill. Only one thing was certain: he had lost. He tried to piece together the sequence of events. The explosion in his chest, the flash of white. After that, as he was falling over, he took another blow to his back. That was the one that disrupted his heart. There's no way I lost? Could lose? Indeed, it was physically impossible. The boy gnashed his teeth and tensed his body in indignation at this unfair conclusion.
こんなのは嘘だ
None of this is real. Oh, he's so delusional. No other werewolf ever managed to lay a claw on me. This pain, this whole situation isn't really happening. It makes no sense. Who on this planet could beat me? Enough thinking. He was ready. From the ground, he glared at his enemy to his side. I don't lose. The very next moment, an unknown type of pain coursed down his spine. It had eyes. Cold eyes. Staring. Piercing. Colorless. The moon looked more alive. Its arms were broken. Its inhumanly powerful attack had mangled them beyond recognition. If it was in pain, it would have cried out, but it was silent. Was it ever alive? Those dead eyes. He'd seen eyes like those before. Those eyes without hatred, without joy, without any feeling behind them at all. It was a mindless insect. The werewolf's hair stood on end. What was this creeping chill crawling up his spine? Having never experienced fear, the werewolf did not know what had become of him. Despite countless clashes against other mystics, it had been a human that broke him. He knew beasts even larger than himself. He knew legendary creatures like himself. He did not know this. He'd never met, much less imagined, a human-sized bug. The chill down the werewolf's spine was so vicious it threatened to split him in two. If he moved even an inch, it would crush his skull underfoot. In spite of the despair gripping him, the boy paradoxically sensed that his opponent would not move at all. This human would exhibit no further violence. It was a creature, no, a stone, that held no animal instincts. It masqueraded as a human. The contradiction grated against his heart, his values, a phantom pain born of an unknown emotion. Fear. It wasn't just grating. It was like many needles slowly digging into his heart. This had been his first taste of doubt, of reality. Such contradictions existed in the world, after all. There were rationalities and questions you did not want to hear the answers to. It hurts. The suppressed pain suddenly flowed through his body like a raging river. This was also a first. Until now, he had always been able to control pain. He had never known what it was like to tremble. An elemental might have even felt sorry for him, if it were here to watch. How sad. Born complete, yet lost in the lunacy of the human world. His heart had fully regenerated. Howling in mental agony, the beast clutched his own trembling body. Those eyes. Those human eyes looking straight through him. And then the boy realized the only reason he was still alive. Even with both arms broken, the human could have finished him off with its legs. But it mattered not, because his opponent was giving him a taste of his own medicine. This was not revenge for trying to kill him. This was revenge for the wounds he inflicted on the girls. The absurdity of it all made his throat tighten. His breathing was frantic. This human had no sense of self. It had no concern for its own safety when it stood between him and the girls. That must be why it had no hate or fear, or perhaps even intent to kill him. Indeed, the fact that he was alive had nothing to do with the human's will. The fight was machine-like, so was its judgment. An eye for an eye, and nothing more. If the werewolf had killed one of the girls, this exchange would have ended differently. If I'd killed them, would I have been killed? He shuddered at the thought. He had never entertained such a possibility. He had never had to, because he was supposed to be the one exception to that rule. Agony kicked him hard in the gut, no matter the mystic. Nothing was immune from injury, from decay. The boy finally understood an obvious law of the world, or rather, he had been taught. He would have killed me. I know it. Those eyes, they would not stop staring down at him. Retribution was a universal law. He was now painfully aware of that fact. And yet, the one who brought form to this ideal was this human. The pain of defeat, the pain in his heart, the pain of comprehending the incomprehensible. Pain. The impossibility of it all had shattered his perfect world. It ate at him, consumed every fiber of his being. The doubt made his head spin. It was too much. Humans were impossible to understand. It's just saying it over and over again. He had not been made to face the death of another, but his own. Unable to cope, he reverted to his human form. Quietly, he shivered like a frightened child in a mother's lap. Still lying in the snow, Aoko choked on her words, unable to entirely comprehend what had unfolded. She could not hide the trembling in her voice. What? Speaking in his usual way, Sojiro nonchalantly turned toward her. What do you mean, what? Do you even know what you just did? She shouted angrily. Oh my god! He's doing the thing! Look at him! Look at him! He's doing the thing that he always does, which is that whenever he does something that boggles the mind or says something, he just sort of stands there with his arms at his side like an idiot, and he just goes, What? What did I do? I don't know. Oh my god, he's the best. Sojiro looked surprised, wondering what on earth he had done to upset her. He lowered his gaze back to the wolf boy, knitting his brow in dismay. Sojiro finally realized what Aoko was referring to. That's weird, Ozaki. I thought you knew. He looked at her in disappointment. New?
分かってるって何
New
を
what? What are you talking about? Feeling slightly affronted, Aoko responded curtly. Sojiro sighed.
山じゃ熊はそう珍しいものじゃない。
Bears are actually pretty common in the
以
mountains.
前確かに言ったじゃないか。
Remember me telling you that? Aoko's jaw dropped. It took her a moment to process what he had just said. She recalled some meaningless conversation or other from who knows when.
君、もしかして
You
俺を
making
バカ
fun of me?
全く。なんで熊を
Good
倒すためなんかに修
Why
行
did they
しな
train
く
me
ちゃ
to
いけない
fight
んだ。
bears of all things? Yes. Now that she thought about it, they had spoken about that. He'd mentioned being familiar with large beasts, and she couldn't deny that she'd heard him utter some anachronistic nonsense about training against them. Which meant he was used to dealing with animals larger than himself. If he'd lived the sort of life that involved run-ins with wild bears, then a man-wolf might only have been surprising but not particularly frightening. Aoko hung her head. After all this time, who was it that really made no sense?
あなたの勝ちよ、そうしよう。
Okay, you win this one, Sojiro. It was hard to tell whether she spoke in admiration or exasperation. Either way, as she slouched in the snow, Aoko spoke quietly enough so only she could hear her words. Toko, on the other hand, understood exactly what had transpired. Bayo lay fallen, now just a sobbing boy, and another boy stood over him with two shattered arms. Near fatally wounded, Aoko and Alice still could not stand, but had recovered enough to breathe. As for Toko, she had only a few tricks up her sleeve. Maybe three or four more runes at best. The magic crests on her back were unusable. She could use the remaining magical energy from the field imprisoning her grandfather, but that would be stupid. If she released her grandfather, she would lose ownership of the sacred ground. Failing to defeat Aoko and Alice now would mean starting over from square one, and she could not afford that. This sibling rivalry had to end. Toko had gambled everything on her surprise attack, using the fact she was still in Naozaki to infiltrate Misaki's defenses. For 3 years, she had labored, selling her work to the association. And fellas, with that music coming in, I think we're about to hit another patch of exposition. I think this is a good place to end it. Look, we could talk a lot about what just happened, and if you guys have any explanations that don't spoil things in the future for me, let me know. But otherwise, I think we all just need a time to sit down and comprehend what just happened. So, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I definitely did, and I will see you guys in the next video. So for now, have a good rest of your day, and I will see you soon. Bye!